it comes to games, I don't put much stock in prestige. Plenty of them are put on an impossibly high pedestal for their influence alone, and have often struggled to maintain that reputation. Super Mario 64, though an undeniably huge influence on 3D game design, is still one of the first 3D platformers ever released, and it shows. I still like 64 a lot, but there are a deluge of better options out there if you're looking for a solid 3D platformer. We can acknowledge its importance to those future titles, even recognize that without it, we wouldn't have those future titles, but that doesn't eliminate its own shortcomings. Even a game like A Link to the Past, which has stood up better than most, is arguably less special than it used to be. I feel like the balance it strives for has since been done better in games like Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. Of course, this is just my opinion and everyone's free to disagree as always. However, I don't like the idea that there's this rule of discussion that states you must consider a game within its own context. It is certainly a valid and helpful way of looking at art, but why does it have to be the only valid way? It just seems like a convenient excuse for people to protect these older games from the heretical idea that some people might not like them as much. No matter how influential your ideas were in a different era, it's difficult for even the best of games to escape the wear and tear of time. Chrono Trigger has been recommended to me ad infinitum, lauded as the best JRPG to ever exist for nearly 25 years. Its reputation precedes itself. As a GameCube baby born in 1997, unless it was through re-releases, I didn't play much from the 20th century. I missed out on A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, Donkey Kong Country, and pretty much every other SNES era classic. Through my Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, I played games like Kirby Superstar Ultra and Super Mario Advance 2, but it's safe to say I'm not an expert in the game design of that era. Traveling back has been a fairly good experience, but I usually come out of it feeling like the hype has been overblown. I assumed, perhaps wrongly, that Chrono Trigger would be the same, that I'd enjoy it like all the others, but come out of it feeling underwhelmed. After all, how can an SNES JRPG from 1995 still pack that kind of power when there have been dozens of games like it since? Well, sit down for a bit, because Chrono Trigger is one of the best games I've played in recent memory. It feels like it could have been created this year, and I wouldn't have even known the difference. I'm not exaggerating when I say it is a perfect mixture of some truly innovative features. This will be a Chrono Trigger retrospective. I feel obligated to preface that my first playthrough began very recently. I have zero nostalgic attachment to anything Chrono Trigger, so this perspective is as neutral as you could possibly get. Another side note, I captured the footage you're seeing from the PC version, mostly because it's the best looking version out there and I want the video to look nice. I consider the DS version to be definitive and prefer to play it on there. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, and Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, came together to craft something that, quote, no one had ever seen before. Yasunori Mitsuda infamously worked himself to the point of developing stomach ulcers, sometimes sleeping in his studio to get more work done and maximize his efficiency. Of course, it was an unhealthy thing he did, and doubtless many of us nowadays would object to him doing something like that, but I bring it up to show just how ridiculously high the passion was for this project. It was originally licensed as a Final Fantasy game, but it broke away from that. Time travel was initially shot down, only to become the core conceit. They couldn't make branching story pathways, so they shifted to a variety of different endings based on player choices instead. Despite every difficulty, the team rose above it and stuck to their guns to finish their passion project. And the final product reflects that ambition. When I got to the trial scene, I realized that this would be something special. Seemingly inane choices made during the Millennial Fair came back to bite me in ways I never could have imagined. Selecting silly dialogue options like I do in basically every game I've ever played swayed the public into believing I was a criminal worthy of the death penalty. Decisions that I didn't even know were decisions, like trying to run away when Marle is picking out candy, or picking up Marle's pendant before speaking to her. had me face-palming in retrospect. Before I knew it, I was being carted off to my execution. If I were to have played optimally and swayed the public to my side, the official response would be 3 days of solitary confinement with a secret execution. Though these choices don't ultimately change much from a gameplay standpoint, besides some extra items, they inject some much-needed personality into everyone's first playthrough. You don't normally need to think about dialogue options in games because they aren't really presented as choices. Much like player death, your responses are seemingly ignored in favor of presenting an unobstructive main progression. You could be the biggest dick in the universe, selecting the stupidest options imaginable, but the story will largely ignore those responses. Chrono Trigger can't just stop at flavor text, though. Practically any decision you're given is relevant in some way. After being carted off to prison, how do you escape? You can wait it out and have Luca save you, or you can bang on the door until a guard walks in, allowing you to knock him out and escape. You might not even realize you have to wait around if you bang on the door, and you might not even realize you could escape if you wait around and notice the days are passing you by. I sure as hell didn't know you could just wait for your execution when I first played. What makes this so impressive is that Chrono Trigger does not stop offering you these choices. When you find Magus sitting on a cliff, you get the choice to kill him or spare him. Your perception of Frog will change in almost undetectable ways depending on your choice. If you spare him right out of the gate, you could interpret that as Frog realizing that revenge is not the answer. If you kill him, you could interpret that as Frog exacting his much-deserved revenge. With the exception of saving Magus and Chrono, none of these choices have any universe-altering gameplay effects, so you could argue that they are largely irrelevant when compared to more complex role-playing mechanics that better define your character. These choices have nothing on the web of player-defining decisions in something like Fallout New Vegas, but I also think there's a beauty to the simplicity of the choices in Chrono Trigger. Instead of focusing on hundreds of different branching paths and stretching the story too thin, these choices affect the world in subtle ways. When Luca is sent back to the past so she can relive her mother's injury, the scene serves two purposes. To contextualize why Luca's mom was always sitting, a question the player may not have even had until that moment, and to present a choice to the player that will rewrite history and prevent her legs from ever being injured. There are no gameplay ramifications for this choice. Instead, the player can feel content when they visit Luca's now healthy mom. This choice is purposely obfuscated to put the player in the same petrified headspace as the 8-year-old Luca. Maybe you saw the note on the table telling you the password like I did, but you won't know the input method. You only have a few seconds to work it all out in your head, and there are no second chances. Depending on how you handle this, you might forever think that this was just a flashback scene meant to better develop her as a character. That was actually my first thought, that the scene was trying to convey Luca's helplessness by making the player unable to help her mom even as a time traveler. Come to find out, you can actually save her. I've scarce seen a game do this before. Cryptic design can often feel out of place, but when paired with insignificant outcomes, it's hard for the player to be upset when they can't find the right answers to the questions they might not even be asking in the first place. These smaller scale choices are a perfect fit for Chrono Trigger's time traveling conceit. You're forced to think about decision making in regards to how it will affect the time stream. Some of these are obvious. Citizens of the Kingdom of Zeal will talk of the powerful moonstones, which store energy from the sun for thousands of years. It's up to the player to realize that there are sun shrines in every time period. This in itself is nothing complicated. However, it's the twist on player expectations that makes it stand out. You might think that all you have to do is travel to the distant future and pick it up, but upon reaching the shrine, the moonstone will be missing. Traveling back to the present reveals that it was only recently stolen, leading you to the Mayor of Por. Driven by a sense of greed that is tearing his family apart, he has stolen the moonstone and refuses to admit it. The solution to this predicament is unclear. You'll likely be trapped in the headspace that the solution must be somewhere nearby. I remember running around town talking to everyone just so I could figure out what this guy even wants. Why won't he just give me the damn stone? Can I pay him? Can I kill him? Can I trade him for it? What am I supposed to do? The answer's surprisingly obvious, but only if you recognize that you're a goddamn time traveler. There is a seemingly unrelated woman in the same building 400 years in the past who really wants beef jerky. Making her pay for the beef jerky will solidify her worldview that only the rich can find true happiness. She passes this on to her children, turning her descendants into greedy pricks. Giving it away for free, however, will cause a change of heart that will directly affect her descendants. Two dilemmas that would be entirely unrelated in any other game are linked by the player's ability to time travel. Not only do they have to put this together for themselves, it is in no way required. Often these older games will make progression unnecessarily confusing. You ever try playing Zelda 2 or the first Final Fantasy? It's pretty hard to figure out what's going on, especially with all the damn interruptions on that pathway. Future games would overcorrect this type of design by making it frustratingly clear to the player what you have to do next. In an RPG or adventure game, finding that balance is really important. Not only is Chrono Trigger's main progression a beautiful mixture of straightforward and obscure, it has the courage to make every single one of its side quests super cryptic. Perhaps the most powerful instance of obscure decision-making and my favorite mixture of main progression and side quest design centers around Chrono's resurrection. Chrono Trigger, a 90s SNES JRPG, has the gall to kill off its main character and make his resurrection completely optional. In order to save him, you have to get the Chrono Trigger from the Guru of Time, win a Chrono Doll from the Millennial Fair, talk to Balthazar, brave Death's Peak, and swap Chrono out for the doll. While some of these are self-explanatory, like obtaining the Chrono Trigger, what you're supposed to do with these items and where you need to find them are not. Balthazar will inform you that a body double will be required to save Chrono, but not only will the player need to seek out Balthazar of their own volition, there's no guarantee they even know how to obtain a body double. It's a reward for completing one of 3 minigames at the Millennial Fair, and is incredibly easy to miss on a casual playthrough. What would be unnecessarily cryptic main progression in any other RPG is rendered genius by Chrono Trigger's willingness to make it optional. Beating Lavos without Chrono is not only possible, but quite likely if you don't know what you're doing. Shortly after his death, the Black Omen surfaces in various time periods and serves as an obvious waypoint for the player to gravitate toward. Players who expect Chrono to come back somewhere along the way might even be inclined to continue along that path, and they'll eventually obtain a fully fleshed out ending variant where Chrono is still dead. Events will play out a bevy of different ways depending on how you approached Lavos to fight him, whether or not you obtained the Chrono Trigger from the Guru of Time, and whether or not you wrecked the Epoch. All roads lead to Chrono's resurrection, but they're all subtly different based on seemingly irrelevant choices you might have made. It will forever differ from the ending where you save Chrono beforehand, and will forever differ from the ending where you save Chrono and put Cyrus to rest, and will forever differ from the ending where you save Chrono and Lucca's mom. There are so many different endings that you can't even hope to experience them all in only a couple playthroughs, but that's the beauty of Chrono Trigger's story presentation. The adventure you have in Chrono Trigger will always be what you make of it, whether you lay Cyrus to rest or ignore him, whether you mend the relationship between Marle and her father or perpetuate it, whether you beat Lavos in the Ocean Palace or on the day of Lavos. You will carve out your own Chrono Trigger. It's a wacky game, one where your party consists of a talking frog swordsman, a powerful cave woman, a robot who develops feelings, and the Fiend Lord himself. All of you travel to different time periods bound by a common goal, but the journey is more important than the destination. Characters in Chrono Trigger may err on the simpler side, but their development is often handled at the whim of the player rather than by the game's own pacing. What this often means is that character-defining moments are relegated to side quests. Sure, Frog has his main story arc surrounding the Masamune, Cyrus, and the Fiend Lord, but he has an additional, optional side quest to complete where he lays Cyrus's soul to rest and has a heart-to-heart with him about everything that happened. You won't find out anything about Lucca's mom if you don't restore the forest for Fiona, meaning that it's possible for it to completely fly over a casual player's head if they don't progress that side quest. However, that tidbit isn't entirely necessary to understand and love Lucca. She's a quirky inventor who helps Robo understand that even robots can be loved. Marle's relationship with her father has nothing to do with her upbeat and playful attitude. But if you like her enough, you can pursue and help to mend that relationship. Completing the side quest will add a new dimension to her character for sure, but I've never seen a game that doesn't force this information down your throat and instead asks you to figure it out yourself. Party composition can affect this perception as well. You can swap out your party for different dungeons depending on which characters you want to see more of, or who you think would have the most to say before an upcoming boss fight. Obviously, putting Frog in the party during the fight against Magus is a no-brainer, and also required. But whether you choose to put Lucca, Robo, or Marle alongside them is up to the player's own interest. Again, it's a really small touch, maybe 1 or 2 lines of unique dialogue, but it's yet another meaningful choice the player can make. While this could potentially lead players to ignore the characters they have less interest in, snowballing their irrelevance, the TP system exists to ensure you switch your team out often. Every character can learn a dual or triple tech with one another, and with 6 characters to mix and match across 20 or so hours of runtime, you'll get to see what every character has to offer at a steady clip. This is part of why Chrono Trigger has such a wonderful sense of pacing. You're never in one place for too long, and you're always switching up your party. One moment you're exploring the Millennial Fair, the next you're in 600 AD helping a frog save the queen, the next you're on trial for kidnapping Marl, the next you're whisked away to a post-apocalyptic future where you learn of a terrible tragedy that will strike the planet. Each of these sections lasts anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, each offering new insight into the characters, world, and storyline. Final Fantasy VII also had this type of pacing, where it jerks you around from place to place, but I'd argue that it moves too rapidly for its own good. By the time I reached the Golden Saucer, not only was I feeling tonal whiplash after the lengthy and engaging Midgar opening, but my interest in the overall narrative was rapidly waning. Chrono Trigger avoids this by standing on an immediately ridiculous premise. It's clear within the first few hours what the threat is. Lavos, a calamity-level event that will inevitably leave the world at the brink of ruin. Our idealistic heroes endeavor to stop him and save the future. Maybe it's simpler than the setup of Final Fantasy VII, but that also lends itself to a more natural pace. Final Fantasy VII has a fairly complicated struggle at the onset, a group of eco-terrorists struggling against a capitalist empire. It's a bitter struggle. Some members die in the process, and they all narrowly escape with their lives. There may have been some out there moments, like when Cloud cross-dresses to sneak into a rich guy's mansion, but it was ultimately to save Tifa. It felt like everything in Midgar had a purpose. Leaving Midgar sees the player relentlessly pursuing Sephiroth on a wild goose chase with very little progress. You'll talk to a random NPC and they'll say, well, I think Sephiroth went that way, I guess. This is when it really started to lose me, because the journey started to feel aimless. Chrono Trigger doesn't have much to actually develop plot-wise. You eventually learn more about what Lavos is, but that's done gradually throughout the game. You fight Magus because you think it'll stop him from summoning Lavos. You help Ayla stop the Reptite invasion and inadvertently learn that Lavos crash-landed in 65 million BC. You explore the Kingdom of Zeal in hopes of slaying Lavos before any of this could ever become a problem. Tangents in said narrative occur naturally and for good reason. The Chancellor, on top of secretly being a monster, has every right to be suspicious of Chrono after Marl went missing, so his trial makes sense and throws the player for a loop. You first travel to prehistoric times to find a stone that can help repair the Masamune, but get sidetracked and trapped after the time gate is stolen. We get to learn more about Ayla and the growing Reptite invasion, and this section is right before an empowering moment with Frog where you storm the Fiend Lord's castle. I particularly enjoy how time traveling is used to officially learn the entire history of the world in a mere 20 hours. Special chests, capsules, and doors, which initially serve no purpose, are later revealed to be remnants of the ancient and long-forgotten Kingdom of Zeal. When Lavos struck and the kingdom fell, so too did all of its treasure and technology. Marl's pendant was created and passed down by said kingdom. Lavos is known to have time manipulation, which is part of the reason time gates start appearing everywhere, but this also explains why Marl's pendant opened up the first time gate we see. It was created using Lavos' energy. The Kingdom of Zeal was one of the highlights for me personally. Not only does it sport perhaps the best track in the entire game, it's genuinely surprising to learn about its existence. I sorta just assumed that the Ice Age would be void of life, and that the Middle Ages would develop somewhere along the way, mirroring our own history. Come to find out that there was an advanced civilization living in the sky thousands of years ago, tapping into Lavos' energy. Unspoken touches of a socioeconomic divide can be felt through the land dwellers who live underground in abject poverty. Up above the clouds, the weather's clear, there's magic everywhere, and humanity prospers. When it all comes crashing down, so too does their arrogance. Their technology's gone, and they now have to live in the bitter cold alongside the poor land dwellers. It's both a surface-level commentary on the dangers of class divide, and a way to explain how the world developed into the Middle Ages. There's so many fun little unexpected twists, like how Magus was only trying to summon Lavos so he could kill it and get revenge for his sister. Having the Fiend Lord himself join your party after all he did to the world and to Cyrus was a shock to the system. It's a shame he doesn't really bond with the other party members. He can't learn dual or triple techs, and the closest thing he has to a side quest is to take out his former underlings and improve the relationship between humans and fiends, somewhat reconciling his previous wrongdoings, but that isn't felt much through the actual dialogue. I get that he's a loner and that the game reflects that by making him individually powerful. I just feel like there could have been more development between him and Frog especially. Even wanting that though, I completely understand why the other party members would be hesitant to bond with him. They probably wouldn't be too keen on hanging out with such a major villain. It's really that common goal of slaying Lavos binding everyone together. Whether it fills out a new detail of the world, further develops a new character, or drives the plot forward, there's never a dull or useless moment. Everything in this story has a purpose, even the seemingly silly and improbable tangents. There's something to be said about just how hard it is to pull that off. Final Fantasy IV was the first turn-based JRPG to implement the active time battle gauge. It adds a timer to turn-based battles, which means you can't just sit around and do nothing. The enemy will attack as soon as they're able, no matter what you do, so you need to think fast. It keeps the player on the edge of their seat and forces them to think up a strategy on the fly. In most other games I've played with this mechanic, it serves as more of a tension builder than anything else. If you wait around too long and can't come to a decision, you'll get your ass handed to you. About all you'll do with it is occasionally keep your healer on standby if you smell a strong attack coming soon. Final Fantasy IX uses this system, and besides a select few bosses where you have to wait a little while after attacking so you don't trigger a counterattack, it's hard to say that it even uses the ATB gauge effectively. It mostly serves as an evolution of traditional turn-based combat, which is fine enough for what it is. Now, Chrono Trigger didn't invent the ATB gauge, but it certainly knew how to best utilize it. Your first group of enemies and set of abilities illustrate this the best. Chrono can either attack normally or use his Cyclone ability at the cost of MP. Cyclone can hit multiple enemies, but they have to be close enough for it to trigger. If done correctly, you can save your MP and get off a powerful attack on multiple foes. It can end the fight more efficiently than if you had just attacked everything normally. This becomes a crucial skill later in the game when enemies and bosses get more involved and you're juggling other party members with unique location-based abilities of their own. You'll soon add Luca to your group, who has the ability Flamethrower, attacking enemies in a direct line. Her physical ranged attack will also turn into a weaker melee attack if the enemies get too close. This is flipped on its head by a robot at the Millennial Fair, who will counterattack if you attack him when he's too close. Each and every enemy is unique in this way. Some of them can only be damaged by a specific element, some of them can't be damaged by physical attacks, some of them need to be hit with a certain type of magic for their defenses to be lowered, some of them can change their defenses after being hit with a physical or magic attack, some of them counterattack when they're close to another enemy, the list goes on and on. While some of these are fairly typical, it's the sheer variety that impresses me. Rarely will you find a new enemy that only serves to be an experience sponge. There's almost always something more going on behind the scenes that's meant to prepare you for a future boss fight. I'm sure we've all eventually fallen into that classic RPG rhythm of spamming our most powerful screen nukes until the enemy disintegrates. By the time I reached the Ocean Palace, I had almost fallen into this rhythm, but the colored scouters stopped that in its tracks. They absorb any element that isn't their own, and immediately counterattack if you choose wrong. A mistimed high-level magic nuke will suddenly see the party completely wiped out if you aren't careful. Instead, maybe you can wait for a well-timed Falcon Strike with Ayla and Chrono, or a well-timed Flamethrower with Luca. They're usually placed alongside mages that can lock your usage of items and abilities, potentially forcing you to think outside of the box since you won't have access to your magic. The frequency of enemy types, paired with the brevity of each new area, ensures the player will have something interesting to think about in battle at all times. Boss fights take advantage of this the most, as you'd expect. Your first boss against Yakra is meant to teach you more about proximity. If you attack him when he's too far away, he'll launch a somewhat deadly counterattack, meaning you'll need to wait until he's close to one of the characters before you can attack. Timing it correctly can be surprisingly tricky, and all the while the boss can throw out attacks whenever he wants. It's even helpful to have one of your more inactive characters revert to a support role and purposely skip their turns so you can heal during dangerous situations. Doing that has its strengths and weaknesses though. You'll be more prepared in case of emergency, but you'll be doing less damage to the boss. Some bosses punish the player for not paying enough attention. The Guardian cannot be attacked until its 2 pods have been taken care of, at which point it will count down from 5 until they're restored. If you attack the body before taking out the pods, they will counterattack with Delta Force, a very powerful triple tech that can do a number on your party at that point in the adventure. If you get a little too greedy during that countdown and find yourself locked into attacking as soon as his pods show back up, you'll be in for a world of hurt. You can't cancel any of your actions once submitted, further encouraging the player to take their time and plan out their moves. Not too much time though, or the boss's attacks will overwhelm you. Nizbel's defenses will only be lowered once you use electricity on it, but he will discharge that electricity soon after, dealing a lot of damage back at you. To make the most of that small window of opportunity, you'll have to make sure that the rest of your party is ready to both dish out their strongest attacks and withstand the incoming discharge. Often their gimmicks will be foreshadowed by other enemies in their dungeon, or by NPCs throughout the world. Nizbel is situated in a dungeon with a lot of reptites who are weak to electricity, so it's almost a no-brainer. An NPC will inform you about canceling out cyclones with wind slashes, which will clue you into the best method to defeat Masa and Mune. Even if you never come across this NPC though, the worst you'll have is a powerful boss, and you might even happen across the solution accidentally. It's the same with the Golem twins, who can copy your attacks and throw a more powerful version back at you. You can put them both to sleep, one of the only boss fights where sleep has any effect whatsoever. It'll lighten the load, so you only have to face one at a time. I didn't know this, so I remember struggling against this one a fair bit on my first playthrough. But it wasn't because I was underleveled or underprepared, it was simply because I kept rushing headlong into danger too frequently. I wouldn't really think about what my last attack was they may have copied, which bit me in the ass on more than one occasion. Simply knowing that I could maneuver my way out with a better strategy feels so much better than realizing I might just have to grind instead. This happened to me during the final form of Lavos. I was around level 50, I had done everything you could possibly do side quest wise, and I had the best equipment you could possibly forge. I was getting my ass handed to me over and over and over again. Lavos' core is accompanied by 2 pods. One pod will heal the core every turn. The core will unleash some truly devastating attacks depending on the time period it summons, and the right pod manages their defenses and will revive the other pod and core if they happen to be destroyed. You'd think you're supposed to take out the core, but that only really delays the inevitable. It's hard enough to down the core with the left pod healing at every turn, but it's even harder since taking out the core when the left pod is active will trigger a powerful counter. What you're really supposed to do is take out the left pod, wait for the right pod to lower its defenses, and then slam the right pod with your most powerful abilities. Unfortunately, you're basically forced to contend with the core's magic attacks, which run the gambit of terrible effects. Having your HP, triggering a random status effect, dealing potentially one-shot magic or physical damage, and inflicting slow. Lavos' core is designed so that you'll struggle no matter which party setup you roll with. His physical and magical AoE attacks will end up killing anyone that doesn't resist them. If you have Chrono, Luca, and Marl, 2 of them will die instantly to his physical attack, and 1 of them will die instantly to the magic attack. There's no weaseling your way out of it, besides maybe grinding your way up to an unhealthy level. However, what I find important here is that I didn't actually need to grind. I was banging my head against the wall because I would always get so close to the end before wiping. I knew that if I just optimized my strategy, made quicker decisions, and kept my party healthy, I'd be able to defeat him with my mental might. Lo and behold, I eventually did it without grinding. It's incredible to me that each and every boss is unique in that way, and it makes them so much more memorable as a result. Of course, the standout example for me will always be Magus. In fact, his entire castle is a highlight of the adventure. Jugglers dot the castle and foreshadow Magus' strategy early on. You have to keep switching up what you throw at them since they'll shift their guard reactively. Magic attacks will raise their magic defense, and physical attacks will raise their physical defense. Slash and Flee are physical based and magic based respectively. Everything in this castle pushes you toward mixing your physical and magical attacks when called for, preparing you for your fight against Magus. backed by one of the best tracks in the entire game, he will test your mettle. Any attack thrown at him will be immediately countered and change his barrier stance to another element. He will be weak to whatever element his barrier is currently made out of. If you don't have access to that element, a physical attack will also change his barrier. It's a fairly simple juggle between his shifting barriers and your ability to keep the party alive. His second phase is quite different though. He will cast aside his defenses to charge up for an incredibly powerful magic attack. You'll have to unleash everything you got as quickly as you can while making sure to keep at least one of your party members active so they can heal when needed. No matter what party setup you throw at him, you'll have an engaging fight. Using Chrono, Luca, and Frog will make the first phase a lot easier to deal with. However, using Frog and Robo could potentially make his second phase less dangerous since their damage potential is a lot higher. It's really just up to you, and the castle itself has trained you to be ready for basically anything, so his tactics don't feel out of place in the slightest. No matter what party setup you throw at him, you'll have an engaging fight. No character feels useless, and I mean that wholeheartedly. Usually a couple characters will fall by the wayside when I'm playing an RPG with such a large playable cast. Rico and Maria from Xenogears, Haru from Persona 5, Sharla from Xenoblade Chronicles, Carol from Tales of Vesperia. It could be due to any number of things. I'm not feeling their playstyle, or I don't like them as a character, or I've been rolling with a team of all-stars for so long that I see no real reason to switch things up. I actually appreciate when games force you to use different characters. Final Fantasy IX's first half is constantly switching between different party makeups, and gives you a lot of time to appreciate everyone's strengths and weaknesses before you're allowed to pick between them. Even then though, a few are bound to slip through the cracks. Chrono Trigger avoids this by making every single character, and thus every single team combination, effective in some way. Chrono is your speedy swordsman, Luca is your most powerful magic user, Marle is your all-star support, Frog is your mixed attacker and healer, Robo is your tank, Ayla is your strongest physical attacker, and Magus is your most versatile magic user. Each have their strengths and weaknesses, but none overshadow the other. You never really need to know what team will be the best for any given encounter, because each combination will work provided you know what you're doing. Chrono and Marle as a team-up is potentially devastating since Marle has haste, and since Chrono has a very high speed stat inherently, the two work very well together for speedy turns. Marle can keep him alive while he goes to town with moderately powerful attacks back to back. The question is, though, who will be your third wheel? Frog's a safe bet, since his heal ability covers everyone and he has some relatively powerful team-up moves with Chrono. You won't be dealing too much damage, even with the dual techs between them, but your party's more likely to survive. Maybe you want more damage output though. In that case, Luca is by far the best choice. While this leaves Marle as the only dedicated healer with a single target healing ability, the potential damage output here is frankly ridiculous. If Marle can haste the entire party, leaving Chrono on temporary healing duty, a high-level antipode bomb will absolutely destroy anything you come up against. It'll cost a lot of combined MP, but if Chrono can keep everyone mostly healthy, it shouldn't be too difficult. Better yet, if you were to replace Chrono with Robo, you'd have a more durable healer with more reliable healing options. He might not get his turn quite as quickly or deal as much damage, but he's also an inherently safer pick. You could randomize a team layout and still find a way to make it work for you. Magus doesn't mix with any of the other characters, that's kinda his shtick, but he makes up for that with his sheer coverage and decent individual power. He has every magic element and can use the AoE attack variants of those elements, on top of having the strongest shadow magic in the game. If you put Ayla and Chrono in there for their dual techs and the frankly insane physical output their combined power can bring to the table, you've basically covered all your offensive bases. You might die more easily without a dedicated healer, but if your aim is to hit hard and fast, that hardly matters. Every team works for every boss or enemy, making it so much easier to experiment without worry. Each dungeon will require something different from the player, and will never overstay their welcome. This extends to the level design as well. You'll be hopping from place to place at a rapid pace, and dungeon mechanics will often change with that pace. Some of them have holes in the ground you have to jump through to reach a lower level, some of them have light puzzle solving standing in your way, some of them even require precise movement, like Ozzy's trap section. I guess in a general sense, precise movement's necessary throughout the game. While some enemy encounters are required, there are plenty of enemies that can be avoided if you can dodge them. Unlike the Earthbound method, where every enemy will just charge at you, making it nearly impossible to avoid them, each enemy has a set pattern they adhere to. You'll be asked to get in between their run cycle, or dodge their thrust to avoid battling them all together. Not only that, but triggering a battle is done seamlessly with absolutely no exceptions. Touch an enemy and you'll instantly be in a battle with them. Yeah, maybe it's a small touch, but it's a flourish that most other JRPGs can't flaunt. Being able to see what you're getting into and giving each encounter a goofy initiation skit like a ninja bird waking up one of his comrades gives each encounter a touch more personality. Removing random encounters also helps to encourage thorough exploration of both the world map and the various dungeons, since you won't have to fear being constantly interrupted. I don't think I would have been as eager to travel to far-off towns or explore a hidden dungeon room for treasure if every 10 seconds the screen shook and you were forced into a battle. Sure, you'll occasionally be forced into a required battle more than once while backtracking, but that's a minor annoyance at best, and enemies thankfully don't respawn on the same screen like they do in Earthbound. It's just a wonderfully paced adventure that respects the player's time and attention span. I never felt like I had to grind since the required battles were placed frequently enough to gain a steady amount of experience. Plus, your experience pool and your TP pool are entirely separate, meaning that required battles really only exist as a formality to get your stats where they need to be. TP will dictate that you learn new abilities at a steady enough rate alongside your levels. I mentioned before that it encourages you to switch out your party often, but it's also a clever way of developing the bonds between them through gameplay. Frog can plunge the Masamune straight into an enemy's skull, and Chrono will follow up by striking the sword with lightning. This tech says a little bit about how they play off each other. It's an almost unspoken battle connection, where Chrono can pick up on Frog's cue to strike the sword. In another insane tech, Chrono will strike Ayla with lightning, powering her up as she tackles a nearby enemy. It says a lot about their trust in one another that Ayla would be willing to let Chrono strike her with lightning. It's a subtle touch, I know, but that's why I love the TP system so much, beyond just the surface level applications. There are so many unique abilities, and though some of them do feel like they accomplish similar things, you'll still find yourself using them all anyway when you switch out characters. Plus, abilities like Fire Sword and Ice Sword are differentiated by their elemental affinity, and thus could be more useful against enemies that are weak to fire or water. Now, this does run the risk of making everything too easy, and I will admit that there are a few instances where I can feel that lack of challenge bleeding through. There are a few unremarkable enemy types that can be brute forced without much issue, and the abundance of shelters and other healing items can often eliminate the tension of moment-to-moment enemy fights. For the most part, though, I found the game to be consistently challenging and engaging. Several of the bosses, like Magus and the Golem Twins, gave me game overs more times than I'd care to admit, and even the ones that didn't sometimes came dangerously close. I only managed to best them after I paid close attention and developed a sound strategy. Really, even if you kill every boss on your first try in an RPG, as long as you had to seriously think your way out of it, the challenge threshold has already been met. In fact, it can sometimes feel more frustrating if you're up against a wall and eventually cave because you're probably just too low leveled. I would take a generally easier RPG over a frustrating one any day. Plus, my mind was never stuck on the challenge level because it had so many other things for me to focus on. It's a damn solid set of mechanics, levels, and enemies for a JRPG. Chrono Trigger is a masterpiece. There, I said it. It's worthy of all its accolades and then some. To be honest, I'm still a little shocked. This video might seem like hyperbole, but I'm genuinely impressed. There was a game sitting right under my nose that refined the JRPG formula to such an absurd degree that it's still unmatched. Games like Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default have experimented with fresh new gameplay systems and story structures. The Persona games mixed in dating sim elements and Pokemon-esque battle mechanics, and the Mario RPGs have added more interactive elements to turn-based combat and world traversal. But none of them can sully Chrono Trigger's triumphant stature. Not because it was revolutionary, not because it was influential, and not because it deserves special treatment. It's a masterpiece because it's an experience that I flat out can't get anywhere else. I can't get a cast of unorthodox protagonists, a wacky time travel premise, an organic sense of world exploration through several different eras, consistently interesting enemy and boss design that feed into each other, an expression of camaraderie through the battle and progression systems, and an array of choices that set up a multitude of different endings and rearrange the world in subtle ways. Most importantly, while I might be able to get one or two of those things in another game, I can never get them all. Chrono Trigger isn't a game that's better than the sum of its parts. The game is its parts. You can't remove much of anything from it, and for me, that's the mark of a true masterwork.